Good evening once again, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday Night Live. Welcome. I hope you're having a lot of fun this evening. Unfortunately, it seems we are having a Twitch outage this evening. So even though we are scheduled to go live on Twitch today as well as we normally do for our Wednesday's live streams, looks like Twitch is out. So no Twitch live stream this evening, but we are still on Facebook and YouTube as well, which, well, everyone's pretty much always on YouTube. I just have those as just two extra spots, really. But anyway, as always, and everyone, a warm welcome to you all this evening, because oh my, oh my, oh my, what a week it's been. What a week. Obviously, Friday we had the emergency budget, and if you've been like me watching lines and graphs probably for the past couple of days, you've basically just seen this. Line going in ever and increasingly down on a very, very dramatic scale. So tonight we will be kicking off going into what I can only be described as the biggest amount of economical coping the Conservative Party has ever been engaged in. Pretty much all of Liz Truss's allies today, and we'll be going over a piece from Daniel Hanan from Conservative Home, are trying to say that it's not Liz Truss and Kersey's fault for trying this mad, crazy, libertarian experiment, which we knew how it would end, because this is unfortunately a maths problem. It's a simple maths problem. This is the case of, economists have gone, look, if you go 2 + 2, that is going to equal 4. No matter how much you want it to be 5 or 3 or 10. Sorry. Sorry. It's not going to work like that. So we're going to go over just in a bit before we, when we kick off this evening, what they've been getting up to. So we've got some articles to go through, and then we've got Rory Stewart going through on an interview telling, I think it is Politics Joe, about what he thinks of Liz Truss and these recent moves. We've then got going into covering the Duran, because with everything else going on, stuff unfortunately is still going on in Ukraine, mainly covering these ridiculous referendums, not only going over Duran, but also George Galloway has decided to have Gonzo Lara, aka Coach Red Pill, on his show to talk about Ukraine and more crazy fantasy politics. So we're in for a good show, I think, this evening. I think we've got some good stuff lined up. So, as always, who is in the chat this evening? So, we've got Morgan Green 19. The new seasons of Little Britain is indeed quite exciting. Let's see how many episodes Truss will still get. Dave W. Hi, folks. On the off chance that our esteemed PM was in hiding, you checked your fridge. Always check your fridge for Boris Johnson's. He may be gone, but he still might be there. He still might be in hiding. So always remember, check your fridge. Susan D. White, good evening to you. Colin Thompson, greetings to you from New York. Chatty Rat, good evening to you. Colin Thompson again. Welcome to the dollar parity. Yep, this is one of the biggest problems that I think not a lot of people are realizing, because we in the UK are currently suffering under a number of crises, not to mention the energy crisis. And of course, what do we buy our energy in? We buy it in dollars. So, of course, at the moment, because, well, the pound used to, emphasis on used to, be stronger than the dollar, we could at least maybe get, a bit of extra, oomph out of buying, oil and gas. Not anymore, because the second you reach parity or it dips below that, which a lot of people are thinking that, guess what? That all becomes more expensive. So it will not only add to the energy crisis, but the cost of living crisis. It's going to make things so much worse on a truly grand scale. And as I said in my video today, this is a disaster movie in the making. It's 28 days later. The disaster that's coming, or Twister, the Twister's coming, and yet you watch it still because you know what's going to happen. And this is a classic case of, we know what is going to happen. It's just a matter of how long this lasts. It really is a matter of how long it lasts. Dave W, we're going to party like it's 1999, 19 cents, that is. Yeah. Jorg, hello to you. Gurjin, good evening to you. Jennifer, hello to you. And Simon says 55, good evening to you. So yes, good evening to you, and hello to everyone else still out there in YouTube land, because we're on Twitch this evening. As we said, we've got a bit of a Twitch outage apparently happening at the moment, so no live stream tonight on Twitch, but never mind, we're still here on YouTube, so there you go. But anyway, on with this. So, as I said earlier, just a few moments ago, Liz Truss's friends have been out in force trying to rally the cause, because things are not as they seem. Because we're already getting word. Oh, Rude, good evening to you. We're already getting word that letters have gone into the 1922 committee. I kid you not. We are getting word that this has happened. So there is a serious reality where Liz Truss may not even make it to Christmas. I mean, when Liz Truss won this, and I said, yeah, she might not make it 6 months. Who knew I would be wrong? Not because I'd guessed, I'd underguessed, or she'd lasted longer than 6 months, but because she lasted less than 3 by the looks of it. That is the potential course. I can't believe we're here. I genuinely cannot believe we're here. 91 Leads, hello to you. And Jem, hello to you as well. Sending all the good vibes. Thank you very much, Jem. So, what was the other reason they were out in force? Well, the IMF has sent a letter to our Chancellor saying, so yeah, all that economic stuff you just done, it's not going to work, so can you please not do it? I kid you not. It wasn't so much as that in the letter, but you can basically sum up the letter as that. And imagine this for a second. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, sending a letter to a G7 country, one of the richest countries in the world, saying, please don't crash your economy. It's just, what am I to think? What are we here to do and think of that this is the level we've reached? And it gets even worse, because as we'll be seeing in a moment, I don't know if it's in this article, but one of the Liz Truss's allies has come out today and said we should leave the IMF because they've come out as a leftist organization So what? IMF exit? I like, what is going on? What is seriously going on here? I'm losing. Honestly, it feels like the government is just in a completely different, separate reality to the one that we live in, and it's just like, what is going on? What is going on? So, oh, so yeah, it looks like it's going to be a fun week. Looks like it's going to be a fun week, and it's going to be a fun Tory conference as well, because any signs of rebellion will get played out. They will get played out, and oh boy, would that be interesting if we had a full blown rebellion at the Tory conference? That would be interesting. Um, Anyway, P, good evening to you. Casper Northern, hello to you. Number 3, hello to you. You're a bit late from your Twitter duties. Well, welcome, number 3. Leah Games, hello to you. Yes, we are indeed going to have to pay for this for decades to come. Yep, exactly, Jem. Those leftists and their sensible warning. Yeah, that's literally what it is. The IMF has sent a reasonable warning saying, you probably shouldn't be doing this. So why are you doing it? Oh, I can't believe they threatened to leave the IMS. What do we just think to that? I mean, it's just got to be there's got to be a moment where you've just got to go, what on earth are you doing? And please, for the love of God, is there an adult in the cabinet? You know? Oh, yeah, and that's the other interesting thing we might see as well, because you've got Trussonomics on one side and our government pushing this bizarre economic theory, and you've got the Bank of England going, that's not sound economic policy. So to counterbalance that, we're going to have to do stuff to try and make sure your policies don't crash the economy. So I'm expecting, probably, maybe sooner rather than later, Truss and Katang will probably try and take on the Bank of England. Although what form that will take, I don't know. Maybe the bank will lose its independence, or maybe they'll make a move to take the independence of the Bank of England away from it. It's very likely that's what we could see if they feel that they don't like what the Bank of England is telling them. That is very possible. Yeah. Jennifer, maybe Liz is annoyed because Boris got away with so much. That is quite true. Boris did get away with a lot. But to be fair to Boris, he stretched out his crazy policies, whereas Truss and Katang have gone in on a 4-day blitz and upset their entire party and probably every economist out there going, what's he doing? what's he doing? You know? You are right. All she wants to do is crash the economy, and people are freaking out. And people are freaking out quite rightly. Because if you crash the economy, there are severe consequences. And it just seems to me that Truss and Katang do not care about those extreme consequences, which is incredibly worrying. Incredibly worrying for this. Yeah, that's very true, Mike. Who will bail out the UK if we leave the IMF? Who will bail out the UK? Because Europe won't, because they won't care. America won't. Are we going to become a brick country? Are we going to have to rely on Russia, India, Brazil, and China to bail us out? Just it's getting to that point. It's just worrying. It's worrying beyond belief. But anyway, let us get the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth. The Commonwealth doesn't do anything economically at all. All the Commonwealth does, it has a meeting once a year to say, "Oh, look, we're in a club," and then you get the Commonwealth Games, and that's it for the Commonwealth. But over to this, because this was in the Financial Times, and this has been Liz Truss's allies in very much response to the warnings that came out over today from the IMF. And I just want to stress how much impact this has generally had, because you do not get the IMF writing to a country like ours, considered to be one of the richest countries in the world, saying, please do not crash your economy. I just want to let everyone to sink that in, because that is what has happened this morning. And this is what Liz Truss allies are responding to. Oh, Cathal OG, good evening to you. So let's see what this was about. So, allies of Liz Truss and Kurzi Kutang have hit back at the IMF's biting attack on last week's borrowing and tax cuts plans. Conservative MP Sir John Redwood was saying that the fund's verdict reflected the errors of the past. So, yet more of this, we're challenging the orthodoxy, guys. It's just Treasury orthodoxy. Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's not how you do it. You'll notice they're rolling out some very similar strategies to what we saw in the 2016 referendum. Very easy, simple slogans, simple to understand. Yeah. No, I'm cancelling my membership and only speaking French. Oh, Gad, good evening to you. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is it. The IMF, the lefty liberal woke organization. Oh, Pretty Bird, greetings to you as well. Yeah, Chatty Rat. The Bank of England has 4 choices. 1, buy its own loans, which are now below face value, which apparently it has done today, apparently. I said that twice in one sentence. How bizarre. That is what has happened today. To stave off economic problems, the Bank of England has had to buy its own loans. Just consider that for a second, that the Bank of England has to do that. I generally just don't know what to say in response to it, but it's just, yeah, we are heading for such bad times ahead, and this has been the political choice of the Tory right wing. No one else's. It's all on them. Anyway, so Bank of England has 4 choices. 1, to buy its own loans now, which are below face value, which I believe it has announced it intends to do today. 2, use its euro and dollar reserves to buy sterling. That is more than likely it will have to do that. 3, increase interest rates. It will probably have to do that as well. And 4, do nothing. That's not a viable option. Exactly. And I think I think they're going to have to do all that. We know they're going to have to raise interest rates. I think they've been very clear that they're going to have to raise interest rates because, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of stuff happening in the mortgage market which does not bode well at all, if that is the case. Getting rid of all its reserves to try and buy sterling, to try and shore up the pound, that's not going to end well either. But the loans are the worst one because when a national bank has to buy its own loans, that is a very clear sign and an indicator there is something not right in your economy. Question. With the Bank of England buying back gilts, crazy as it sounds, does this mean austerity on an unprecedented scale? Not really. So, obviously these loans are essentially what is government debt. But because of what the government has just done in that mini budget, where they're saying, right, we're going to take less tax, means that they've got less revenue coming in to cover essentially what the government would normally provide. And instead, it's going to borrow more. But because it has decided to do that, interest rates have gone up. Markets have basically said, well, we're now unsure about the debt that we would normally buy off you. Is it like a surefire way for you to respond to that? So them doing this doesn't really mean austerity, but it could certainly lead to that. You could certainly see whoever comes after Truss trying to sort of maybe sell this, but it just depends how much economic trouble Truss and Kwarteng actually get the UK into. And it is very, very worrying. And make no mistake, there are a lot of economists out there very, very worried. And one of the biggest problems, even I'm trying to sort of get my head around this, and I've said it before, I'm not an economist. I'm not an economist, and even what I've been seeing from other economists is very, very worrying. But I'm not one. But trying to get my head round sort of all these economic terms and what these mean, it's going to be one of those times where we have to do probably explainer videos explaining exactly what it is the government has done. So probably we might have to do that. We'll probably have to do that. But no, I probably doesn't mean austerity on an unprecedented scale. It means that economically, bad times are ahead, unfortunately. Duke Vengeance, good evening to you as well. Anyway, let's go back to this. So anyway, where were we? So reflected the errors of the past. After several days of financial turmoil, with sterling falling and rising costs of government mortgage holders, the IMF took unusual steps on Tuesday to criticize the UK's economic policy, saying, given the elevated inflation pressures in many countries, including the UK, we do not recommend large and untargeted fiscal packages at this juncture, the IMF said. So it wasn't just it wasn't every country. It was just, no, UK, you need to stop what you're doing. What are you doing? The IMF said it is important that fiscal policy does not work at cross purposes to monetary policy. Ministers were not told speaking publicly on Wednesday morning, but on the BBC Today programme, former Minister Redwood said the IMF should not have criticised the UK. But that's what they do. That's the entire point of the IMF. He said the fund did not foresee the big inflation which they triggered. They then didn't have sensible advice in good time to see off inflation. Now, late in the day, when the inflation is very visible for all to see, they're suggesting taking on measures to try and tackle when the world has moved on, Redwood said. a lot of countries are still trying to deal with inflation. Inflation hasn't really gone anywhere. He also hinted that the government's response to concerns about unsustainable public finances would be a new program of austerity and spending cuts to lower tax revenues. So we are getting more austerity. He said, "We haven't seen the whole policy. We need to see the overall budgets, what they look like, and the spending side as well as the revenue side," Redwood said. So, yeah, thanks for that. More austerity, probably on an immense scale, because they've got to try and balance the books somehow. But he wasn't the only one going to bat for Truss. We've also said Frost was as well. So what did Frost have to say? Lord David Frost, because he's a lord, the UK's former Brexit negotiator, added, "The only way forward for Britain is to lower taxes, spending restraint, and significant economic reform." Yeah, thank God this guy's not an MP. Well, he's a lord, but yeah, this is one of the reasons why we should get rid of the House of Lords, is to get rid of him, because he does not need to be near any government policy, quite frankly, ever again after the mess he and Boris made of Brexit. But Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, described the fund's criticism as very serious and accusing the Prime Minister and Chancellor of making a self-inflicted mess of the economy. Starmer said that Kwarteng should bring forward a planned statement on how he would repair the public finances from November. They've got to review the plans they put out on Friday. They've got to do it urgently, in my view, Starmer said. And he's right. And the Office for Budget Responsibility, we've got to see this. We've got to see this, and we've got to see what they say. But I'm not thinking it's going to be very good. I don't think they're going to report back very good things, to be honest. Paul, yeah, fair play to you all that, man. You've been saying since day one that we would end up with austerity on steroids. Sadly, you are right. Yeah, that's what we're getting. I generally think if they continue with this plan, that is what we're going to get, because it's their only idea. Their only idea is just more austerity, because they want to shrink the size of the state. Because as far as they are concerned, you cannot have a bigger state, or the state must be at a, quote, reasonable size. But they never actually set out what that reasonable size is. And of course, the thing is, governments get bigger over time. We've seen this historically. Governments get bigger because they have more things to do. They need more expertise. They need more people to do more jobs. And yet, what is our government doing? Slashing numbers, slashing budgets. And that's not even to mention, of course, the sunset clause that got put in all those the EU regulation. Honestly, I feel sorry for the civil servants. I really, really do. I really do feel sorry for the civil servants at this time. It must be an absolute nightmare to be a civil servant at the moment. So, back to it. So he went on to say that there is no sign that Chancellor is willing to change course on these tax cuts aimed at boosting economic growth, although the financial markets did keep up the pressure overnight. The sterling was down 0.4% against the dollar at $1.69, having stabilized since large falls on Friday and Monday, but a sharp rise in government borrowing costs have now fed through to the mortgage markets, which I think could be where a lot of our problems come from. because you saw yesterday a lot of banks pull a lot of mortgages which are sort of interlinked into how well, or in this case, how badly the economy is doing. Lenders have had to pull fixed rate mortgages deals while they reprice them at higher interest rates, causing pain for those buying property or coming to the end of a fixed rate deals. The future market expect the Bank of England to raise interest rates to over 6% by the next summer. The cost of overall government borrowing over the next 2 years fell to 4.5% on Wednesday, down from more than 4.7%. I want to make a case here because Germany is borrowing, I think, at 2%, but Italy and Greece, normally the countries, whenever you hear the words economic crisis in Europe, it's normally either, or has been in the past, about Greece or Italy. Italy and Greece are currently borrowing at, I think, 4%. So at this rate, our interest rate on borrowing is more than Italy and Greece. That tells you everything you need to know about what the markets really think about our economy and how bad it's going to go. Where are we? So it fell down from 4%, but it's still far above the level of 3.5% over a week ago. So you can just see how much it's gone up by. The long-term government borrowing cost at 10 years and 30% have also risen by more than a percentage point over the past week in moves not seen for decades. Even supporters of Truss have become worried by the rising borrowing costs. Julian Jessup, an independent economist who has been advising the new Prime Minister, referred to the rise on Twitter, saying, "Even I cannot put a positive spin on this." So imagine that for a second, that you've got an economist linked who is directly advising Truss, saying, "Yeah, I can't put a positive spin on this." What do you do? What do you do? It's I think what could kickstart all our economic disasters is a housing crash. Now, it won't be the same as what happened in 2008, but I think you could get into a situation where you get a lot of people, I think very quickly, maybe unable to repay their mortgages in large volumes. And I think that will put enough pressure to maybe start the dominoes falling. And I can't predict that is where our economic troubles are going to come from. But I've been saying for the past, well, since the summer, for the past couple of months, I think something is going to happen in November. There is going to be it's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, because we are in so many crises at the moment and they're all interlinked. If you ever remember playing the game, if you ever played the game Kaplunk, it's you have a little cylinder with a little ball around it, and then you put in all the sticks, and then you put in all the marbles that go on top. And the idea is you just start pulling out the sticks, essentially, to start letting the marbles fall. And I generally think that is what is going on at the moment. That there's this massive economic kerplunk coming, and I can't tell you what will start it, because it could be just something really small and innocuous. Something just goes wrong somewhere, and then it just has a massive knock-on effect for everything else. It could be external, it could even be internal. But I think something could happen in November, and it's not going to be good. I really do think it's not going to be good at all. Oh, Tories don't get tasered. Good evening to you. Good evening to you. But yeah, number 3. Yeah, you, like many people, are in the exact same situation. Exact same situation. I've got a friend who's I've forgotten what they were called then. I've got a friend who's a solicitor, and on Friday when that budget got announced, either all the people who were planning on selling or moving just went, no, we're not moving, or pulled stuff completely. And I think at the moment you're looking at a potential freeze in the housing market, which is bad as well if you get a freeze. And if there's a freeze in the housing market for too long because people are so worried about moving or having to take on a new mortgage, that could also be a significant source of more economic problems. But my friends, if you want what is essentially the epitome of crazy, look no further than Daniel Hanan. Yes, it is Daniel, the brain of Brexit, Hanan, writing on Conservative Home that no. The pound crashing has nothing to do with what Truss and Kwarteng have announced. Nothing to do with them at all. It's because they're terrified of Starmer. It just... I'll let that sink in. I'll let that sink into you all. But oh my word. Yeah. And this is the reaction to a mini budget. God knows what's next. Exactly. The Chancellor normally does like an autumn budget. So we'll probably get that around mid-ish, end of October, roughly. And they've already said that there's more to come. I'm sure we'll get hints at what they'll announce, probably in during the Tory conference in a couple of weeks. So yeah, like I said, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Yep, David Walker. Yeah, the lunatics have really taken over. Yep, exactly. Yeah. Honestly, it's difficult just not to do this because I honestly just don't know what to say to some of this stuff because it's just like, why on earth would you do this? This is like when someone comes to you with a bad idea and you tell them it's a bad idea and they go and do it anyway. And then they come to you saying, why didn't it turn out good? And you're like, I told you it was a bad idea. You're like, I just generally don't know what to say to some of this. It's just generally don't know what to say to some of it. Yeah. In fairness, this is clearly satire. Oh, I wish. And bear in mind, folks, brace yourselves for what you're about to hear. if any of you have seatbelts, strap yourselves in. If you do happen to be driving or listening to this while in transit, please do pull over and stop listening till you can at least listen in a safe environment. Um, whew, get ready. Get ready. Strap yourselves in. So this was Daniel Hanan writing in Conservative Home. So Lord Hanan of Kingsclere, he's a Conservative peer and columnist. He was a Conservative MEP from 1999 till 2020, and he's now president for the Initiative for Free Trade. Let's see what good old brain of Brexit Daniel Hanan has to say about this, although we already know. I shouldn't have read to you the primer. I shouldn't have read to you the primer. I should have just gone into it. But anyway, what's he had to say? You really think this is about tax cuts? That the fall in sterling and the surge in the price of government borrowing were responses to cutting income tax to 19 pence and return to the 14 pence higher tax rate than perpetrated throughout all but the next final month of the Brown and Blair years? Well, Dan, it's your party that made a massive economic announcement to which every single economist and everyone in financial sectors involved in markets and looking at the economy is going, what on earth are you doing? Why have you done this? We don't understand. So let's go on. Come off it, he says. Just look at the numbers. According to the Treasury, by far the biggest revenue commitment in Friday's mini budget was the energy price freeze, costing £31 billion for households and £29 billion for businesses. Then came the non-rise in national insurance of £19 billion and corporation tax at £19 billion. That's a lot of money, Dan. That's a lot of money. And I've said this before, when you look at sort of wealth and sort of nations and you start talking about, billions of pounds, you tend to get sort of numb to the sheer amount of money that we're talking about. But your government, because they've had to do that, will have to borrow more. They aren't saying we're going to increase taxes or we're going to keep taxes to bring in more revenue to help pay for these things that we've done. But again, like I say, guys, this is the brain of Brexit speaking. Only a fool would leave the single market and customs union. Compared to these figures, the actual tax cuts, as opposed to the cancellation of promised rises, which no one surely would propose from its first principles today, were trivial. £5 billion of that income tax, £2 billion for the long overdue IR35 rollback, and £2 billion for the scrapping of the top rate, £1.7 billion for the rise in the stamp duty threshold. That's still a lot of money, just To listen to the BBC or the Labour Party, you would think that the fall in the pound was caused not by the 60 billion energy pound price freeze, nor yet by the 400 billion dropped on the lockdowns, still complaining about that. But by the 2 billion, which will be supposedly lost in removing the highest tax rate. £2 billion a year to the government, Dan, is a lot of money. That £2 billion can help pay for a lot of stuff. And you pulling that away is basically saying the government's not going to take in taxes, which means there is now a hole in the government money. Where's that money going to come from? It's got to come from somewhere. And you'd think that someone who is a fiscal hawk, a fiscal conservative like Daniel Hanan, might be a bit upset by that. But no, of course he's not, because, well, I've said before, oh, there we go. Oh, hang on. He's on board with this. Then yes, this is the real thing. Because that's what he's on board with. That's what he wants. And that's what he wants to essentially go and buy. That we need to be this low tax, low regulation state, and somehow that'll work out fine. But this trickle-down economics, these crazy economic plans that this right-wing libertarian wants to put forward, have never been tested, and when they've been put into models, don't really tend to work out. Anyway, back to it. So I write supposedly because the Treasury estimates, have a tendency to downplay the secondary effects of tax cuts. I suggested that scrapping the 45 pence rate will pay for itself, not only just over time as more business comes to the UK, but immediately as rich people find it no longer worthwhile to pay for inglorious schemes to reduce their tax liability. They will still do that. Bear in mind, we have a lot lower tax rates than we did, a couple of decades ago. But even back then, they were still doing it. They were still doing these, ingenious schemes to reduce their tax liability. They're still doing it now at less than, 45%. Why are they going to stop? That's not going to happen. And there is also no evidence to say that more business is going to come to the UK either. And again, it's pipe dream fantasy. Oh, if we do this, this will happen. Because all these right-wing libertarians always say that, if you lower corporation tax or you lower the top income rate for the highest earners, somehow, in some way, they'll spend more of this money to put into businesses and invest it more. But that's not happened. We've seen that not happen in real time. But that's what he's invested in, unfortunately. So to blame these, I love it, tiny tax reductions. These are not tiny tax reductions, right? They are not tiny. And to call them tiny, I think is grossly wrong. For the fall in the pound is akin to a fly aligning itself on an exhausted shire horse as it lied down to sleep, telling itself that it rested the mighty beast to the ground. Well, he's certainly got away with words, but still not true, Dan. Still not true. The pound has been weak since the 2008 financial crisis, a victim of the high spend, low interest rates combo that characterized Osbornomics. Don't think that was the case. Don't think that was the case, Dan. I don't think that's the case at all, Dan. But high spend means that the government is then spending it on goods and services and investment in the country. Is that not a good thing? And low interest rates means that the government can borrow more, something that trusts would want to do. You could then borrow more to invest in the country. That's a good thing. But no, because Dan is a free market fundamentalist, low interest rates are bad. So go figure. Britain decreed a harsher lockdown than many countries. I don't think we were harsher than most of the countries, but there you go. I love this. A more generous furlough scheme. No. We had probably one of the most ungenerous furlough schemes when you compare it to other European countries. And as this column kept lamenting at the time, there was bound to be a reckoning. Doesn't seem, if this reckoning was meant to happen, why did it not happen like 5 years ago or 4 years ago? You're like the prophet. Well, you're like Alex Jones. Whenever he's declaring that, the government's about to do a false flag attack, as he will say, like, almost hourly on his show, then whenever something happens, he can go, government false flag. It seems like you've been doing your own version of that on this blog, Dan. So what's his explanation for this? So why now? Why did this long-term decline in sterling and rise in the cost of gilts accelerate at the very moment when Oz-Brownism was being abandoned? Because no one expected you to do this at this time when there are massive inflationary problems, a ton of different problems, Brexit problems, cost of living crisis, energy crisis. No one expected you to just pull out randomly, let's go for this crazy economic plan because we think it might work. When you've got the IMF saying, don't do this because it's a dumb idea, I think that's more than enough reason. I think that's more than enough reason. After all, this budget was intended to precisely undo the root causes of that decline, halting the encouragement of the state and removing barriers to enterprise. You do not have to discourage the state to remove barriers to enterprise. I've been worried for so long up until really the mini budgets, and still I think lots of SMEs are really going to struggle this winter about the problems that they've been having. You didn't really seem to be too bothered when they're not helping them out. So many market analysis have struggled to explain it. If you've been like me and you've been following these articles, the numerous Twitter threads, the blogs, looking at basically graph after annotated graph to explain what is going on, the idea that this can't be explained is nonsense. It's just that Daniel doesn't want to encourage or at least admit that there is actual proper criticism out against the stuff that he has been pushing for. So, pointing out that most of the budget had been flagged up in advance. No, it hadn't. They'd actually been keeping it pretty close to their chest. There was a leak about stamp duty, and that was it. But none of this had been flagged up in advance. Then the Tory leadership contest, Liz Truss had talked up about doing all this stuff, but no one actually believed she would do it until, well, she did it. Deutsche Bank's team made an especially telling observation, saying perhaps it was the unbiased reveal of trickle-down economics that had markets a little aghast. And again, we know trickle-down economics doesn't work. This is what many countries have been doing for the past couple of years. Oh, it's trickle-down economics. If trickle-down economics is meant to have worked, then why isn't America doing absolutely fantastic? Now, yes, it economically is doing better than we are, but there are again numerous reasons. And one of the big things is we are not America. Shockingly enough, I know that has to be said, but we are not America. And there are other numerous reasons. Maybe, Dan, you should go back to the white paper, the levelling up white paper, which explains many of the reasons why the UK lags behind other, not just America, but many other European countries with, well, smaller industry bases than us. So, that quote, obviously false statement accurately sums up the mood. What? How is it false? I can't be bothered, he says, to explain all over again why trickle down is a myth and observe this leftist caricature of what the rightists are supposed to believe. A conspiracy theory as outlandish after its fashion as QAnon. What? What is going on? Daniel Hanan has just basically said anyone saying that this is trickle down economics is a conspiracy theorist in the exact same vein as QAnon. Like, there it is. Like, what? What? No, Dan, trickle down economics is a thing. This is what you believe, Dan. You've said it earlier. He's just said it earlier, Dan. You've just said, where is it? So you've just said earlier on that you suspect that the scrapping of the 45 pence rate will not only pay for itself over time as more businesses come to the UK, but immediately, as for rich people, find it no longer worthwhile to pay for ingenious schemes to reduce their tax liability. That's trickle down economics, Tan. That's trickle down economics. It is not a conspiracy. It is not a conspiracy, Dan. You, it is not mischaracterizing you because you've just said it right there. Remember, guys, this guy is like considered like a top right wing intellectual. Like, what do you say in response to that? To someone who, again, will read that part for you again. So you suspect that scrapping the 45 pence rate will, for itself, not just pay for itself over time, but also as more business comes to the UK, but immediately as rich people find it is no longer worthwhile to pay for ingenious schemes to reduce their tax liability. That is trickle-down economics. That is what you've just said would be good. That is what you have been calling for. And a couple of lines later, you've said that trickle-down is a myth. It's an absurdist leftist caricature of what rightists are supposed to believe. It's absolutely not a myth because you just espoused it a couple of paragraphs ago. It's not a caricature because you've just, again, back up there, said it. What rightists are supposed to believe, well, why did you just say that a couple of moments ago? And it is not a conspiracy theory as outlandish as QAnon, because you are preaching the gospel of trickle down economics. Honestly, I'm getting more and more lost for words. Whenever we come to this thing, it's just like I just don't know what to say. What do you say in response, or what am I meant to say? And someone responded by literally preaching trickle down economics, and then a couple of paragraphs later to say that it's a myth, is being mischaracterized, and that it's some sort of conspiracy theory, and it's not really what we believe. It's just a left right wing straw man. But he's just said he believes in the doctrine of trickle down economics. What? What am I meant to believe? What honest? What I'm not meant to believe, but what am I meant to say and respond to that? I keep on doing this constantly, but I just don't know what else to do. I really just don't know what else to do. But, ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Hanan, the brain of Brexit. Oh, yeah, very true. There was never a time we had experts to listen to. Now we have loudmouth grifters pretending to be experts, or they just dismiss the experts. Yeah, very, very, very true. Very, very true indeed. But dear. Honestly, this broke me. This blog has broken me. But anyway, let's continue, shall we? I did tell you you had to strap yourselves in for this one. I have written that rebuttal many times over the past 15 years, and I'm delighted that Con Holmes Willen Atkinson is taking the flame up from my weary hand. Oh my. We might have to do that another time. We might have to do that another time. maybe not today. maybe another time, but maybe not today. Because ooh. What do you say? What do you stray? Yeah. This stream requires alcohol. It just doesn't require alcohol, it requires copious amounts of alcohol. That's what this stream desperately is in need of. Oh. Anyway, let's get back down to it. So, he can now pump bullet after bullet into the idea, the zombie idea of trickle-down, the lie that won't die. But you've just described... There's no point, really, is there? There's really no point. There's really no point trying to address him. But the fact that no one is proposing trickle-down economics doesn't stop people thinking that someone is. The fiscal statement has been so widely mischaracterized that I suspect several voters generally now believe that the Tories are trying to boost the economy by making the rich better off. But Dan, you've just... Oh my God, this is... But immediately, as rich people find it, it is no longer worthwhile to pay for ingenious schemes to reduce their tax liability. That's a key tenet of trickle-down economics, Dan. Just... Oh. Oh. I'm generally now I'm suffering. I am generally suffering through this. Oh. While the sterling sell-off may have reflected on those who the Deutsche Bank analysis may have clumsily been suggesting, it is the belief that this budget has made a Labour victory more likely. Yes, it has made their Labour victory more likely. So at least we agree on that, Dan. For although the economics were sound, no, there is no economist out there, Dan, who is saying that is a good thing. Anyway, for the economics was sound, the politics were always going to be difficult. This is few voters get the counterintuitive logic of the Laffer curve. This Laffer curve has been economically disproven. It is laughed out of lots of economic classes. It is not taught anymore as a serious economic thought or idea. That is how bad it is. In fact, I'm going to have to do a video on explaining this, because this is part of the not only is it expressed numerous times in here, but we're going to have to explain it because this is a lot of what the rebuttal, I think, to a lot of this economic stuff is. Oh, thank you very much, number 3. I've just seen you there. Have a drink on me. Thank you very much, number 3. Thank you very much indeed for your support, the super chat there. Thank you very much. But yeah, we're gonna. I think I'm gonna have to do a video on that, just showing why that is just complete nonsense. Because this is what they do. Yeah. Burley Wallet. Do you think that they agree with the phase? More money in the hands of the wealthy and corporations promotes spending and free market capitalism, but in a colloquial term for that is a straw man. Yeah, exactly. They do. They do. They seriously do. But anyway, we'll trust me. We'll get back to that. But I think we have to uncover what that is and go over that more. But anyway, so a government might earn more revenue from a 40 pence or a 45% tax rate, but it will lose voters for those who refuse to believe it. It's not just a refusal to believe it. It's a very clear statement that those who earn a lot more versus those who don't earn a lot more are now far significantly better off by about £5,000. That is a significant sum of money to a lot of people in this country that they can't just pull out of thin air. And yet, getting rid of that 45% top tax rate, that is what the government has just done. A government might enlarge the economy. Yeah, might, Dan. Might enlarge the economy, but there is no growth plan, at least not yet. And so have more to spend on public services. But you've just cut the size of corporation tax as well. And as we've said before, even if you do get growth, like by some miracle, they achieve growth. First of all, as a lot of economists have said, it is not going to be sustainable. And second of all, that growth could be built on very, very shaky foundations. So any shock, even a small one, could wipe out that growth very quickly. That is not good. And so to have more to spend on public services, that the slashing giving money to public services, Dan. This is all part of Laffer curve stuff, but you see why it's nonsense. But trust me, there's even more ridiculousness to it. And most of it, you won't be surprised, comes from Patrick Minford. Yes, the Brexit economist, Patrick Minford. So, back to it. If it scraps the EU's limit on bankers' bonuses, but wait, how does it have more money to spend on public services if it scraps the EU's limit on bankers' bonuses? Even I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense. But the voters who make a logical assessment of their interest will be outnumbered by those who want anything done to make bankers' lives harder. It's not that they want bankers' lives to be made harder. Bankers, again, we're talking about bonuses here, not wealth, not like their wage. Because one of the things we learned during the 2008 financial crisis was that bankers got given ridiculous bonuses for making outlandish bets with people's money, which led to just an unhealthy obsession with greed in the banking sector, which eventually led to the 2008 financial crisis. So we put the EU put a cap on bankers' bonuses so that that couldn't happen anymore, so that they weren't encouraged for that. That is not a good thing, Dan. Can we stress that is not a good thing? So, in other words, and I am aware of how much this runs against the current narrative, what we have seen since Friday is partly a quote market adjustment to the increased probability that Sir Keir Starmer will win in 2024 or 2025, leading to higher taxes, higher spending, and a weaker economy. Why is the market reacting to something that is 2 or 3 years away at this point, Dan? What happened recently? Oh, that's right. It was your mini statement that they are reacting to. It's got nothing to do with Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer has nothing to do with this. And guess what? If Keir Starmer gets in, he will have to raise higher taxes. He probably will have to have more higher spending because of the crazy economic theories and tests that Truss and Katang have done. So he will have to do that anyway. That is inevitable. But a weaker economy will not be because of that. It will be because of the exact economic policies that you are advocating for. That and one other thing. The sell-off also reflected a measure of surprise that interest rates were also not rising faster. During the leadership election, Liz Truss made no secret of her views that the Bank of England had kept interest rates too low for too long. She made that argument a fairly orthodox one among Conservatives in several interviews, including with this website. A lot of people have been saying that, Dan, but they didn't want to raise interest rates too quickly because that also might have had economic problems as well. Just yeah. Honestly, this is so hard going. I thought we'd have been done by now. I genuinely thought we'd been done by now and on to, like, probably despairing at, the Duran and, George Galloway. But no, we're still here. We're still here. Oh no. Oh no. Chris Fisher, good evening. Good evening to you. You've missed half of it. Oh, trust me, Chris. You be glad you've missed half of it. Yeah, this is fun. We're having fun. We're having fun here, aren't we? Aren't we, guys? Honestly, I feel like we should watch "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared" just to try and balance like some of this. But yeah, but anyway, let's get back to it. So, given the Bank of England had just raised interest rates by a smaller amount than expected, markets were looking to see what the Chancellor of the Exchequer would say. Might he talk of the new mandate for the bank, or at least express a public view that what interest rates should be? In the event, he did not. And on the contrary, he spoke of the independence of the Bank of England being sacrosanct. Now, I happen to agree with the Prime Minister about interest rates, because Dan is part of the school of thought that low interest rates are bad. They have indeed been too low for too long. You might take a different view, and that is striking that several broadcasters were warming up to this with talk of how much more debt people have been taking on now than interest rates were at a historical normal level. Which broadcasters, Dan? Which? Can you name a few? Please do name them. But again, part of the reason, again, in having low interest rates is people can borrow. People will take on more debt. Unfortunately, you have encouraged this with awful abandonment. This has been a very, very much a frightening thing to do, to encourage people to take on more debt. You might share their implied conclusion, namely that our monetary policy should be dictated by the needs of those who mortgage themselves to the eyeballs in the belief that the near zero interest rates would carry on forever. Fine, but don't pretend that higher interest rates represent a failure of Trussonomics. We will get higher interest rates because of Trussonomics, which will make Trussonomics infinitely worse in the things that it hopes and wants to achieve. They are precisely what the Prime Minister and her Chancellor want to happen. No, they don't. No, they don't. That's a lie that you are trying to propagate and trying to make at least your fellow Conservatives calm down, because they are so worried that they are sending letters to the 1922 committee because they are worried that Liz Truss is about to crash the economy. Let's not pretend this is why this blog partly hasn't been written, to try and calm and allay their fears. So much commentary over the past 5 days has been driven by motivated reasoning. Some pundits don't like Truss. Others have never forgiven the Tories for Brexit. Yet others are horrified by the idea that growth, rather than equality, should be the government's priority. Fair enough, but let's be clear-headed about what's happening. And Dan, those who are clear-headed are saying it very, very clear. All this economic trouble, all this crashing of the pound is a direct response to Trussonomics. Doesn't matter that I don't like Truss. Doesn't matter about Brexit. Doesn't matter. Because, shocking to you, Dan, you can achieve growth and equality at the same time. But you just don't like how we would actually have to achieve that. The prospects of lower interest rates would, for obvious reasons, mean a weaker pound. The prospect of a high-spending Labour administration likewise, but a tax cut designed specifically to get the economy moving again. You're betting everything on doing that at a time when economically everything says the exact opposite. Oh, Reagan Leet, good evening to you. Alexander Campbell, good evening to you as well. Welcome to you. The Lefty Boater, good evening to you as well. Alex Chapman as well. We hadn't seen you sneak in as well, but good evening to you. Welcome to what has been me suffering for the past while, trying to work out why Daniel Hanan isn't gold in this. Oh, thank you very much, number 3. All public statements should be verified by law. The punishment dependent on the impact to the degree of harm done. Lots of work for the courts. If only. If only. If only that was, if only that was the, if only we could number three. But I very much doubt we'd have a leg to stand on. So let's finish this off. The Chancellor's best option now is to prove that he means what he says about all these supply side reforms that he flagged up last week. More housing, easier fracking, cheaper childcare, lighter regulation, and so on. Everything, especially lighter regulation, not many people are going to agree with. Cheaper childcare, they don't really seem to have an idea for that because you'd have to give people money to maybe achieve cheaper childcare, Dan. No one wants easier fracking. And while more houses would certainly be a solution to the housing crisis, it's not going to do just that by itself, because the Conservatives have been building more housing, but the problem is they've never taken on the house builders who hoard massive tracts of land for years before building on them. So, as his words turn into policy, the economy will grow. Again, remember this, people. When the economy comes crashing down all around us, remember what Dan wrote here on this. Because, oh boy, will this become good to come and visit back when growth hasn't happened, when the pound has tanked and we've gone below parity with the dollar, when we've got a housing crisis, when all these crises have finally come together and we don't know what will cause it, but it will be, could be one, maybe an insignificant thing that someone just overlooks and that just happens to just, pull the needle out of the Kaplunk Tower and it all just comes crashing down. It's on its way, people, and it's going to be bad. But he has to show that he's serious, that he cares more about long-term prosperity than about short-term headlines. The thing is, how long is this going to take him to kick in? How long are people going to suffer under these crazy ideas? And even then, your idea of long-term prosperity, given that you like trickle-down economics, and don't lie to me, Dan, you've promoted it in this very blog, and then said, it's a myth, it doesn't exist. This is why it would be bad politics as well as terrible economics to back down. And that, people, is Daniel Hanan trying to blame all this run on the pound, all this economic turmoil that we're currently facing, not on Truss and Kersey. Oh no, this was all planned. Don't worry, guys. It'll be all fine. It'll all be jammed tomorrow, guys. Trust me. This is what these free market fundamentalists have been saying for years. According to them, the moment we Brexited, everything should have shot up. We shouldn't be having a single problem. Seem to be having a lot of problems. We don't seem to be doing that well economically. And yet, this is it. And the idea that he's promoted this, and again, I want to go back to that point because it's laughable. It is so laughable. I'm surprised more people actually haven't brought this up. So we'll just read this paragraph and we'll contrast it with the other paragraph. So I write supposedly because Treasury estimates have a tendency to downplay the secondary effects of tax cuts. I suspect that scrapping the 45 pence rate will pay for itself. not just over time as more businesses come to the UK, but immediately as rich people find that it is no longer worthwhile to pay for ingenious schemes to reduce their tax liability. That is trickle-down economics. That is trickle-down economics. The idea that if you reduce the burden of those on the top, somehow, magically, all this money will come floating down. Ooh. Look at it. It's trickling down. It's trickling down. It's trickling down. That's trickle-down economics. And yet, for those who came in late, Dan had this to say in just a couple more paragraphs later. So, he's had this to say in a statement later. The obvious false statement accurately sums up the mood. I cannot be bothered to explain all over again while trickle-down economics is a myth, an absurdist leftist caricature of what rightists are supposed to believe, a conspiracy theory as outlandish after its fashion as QAnon. So let's go through that one at a time. Trickle-down economics is a myth. If it's a myth, why has Dan just a few sentences ago, and indeed in the rest of this blog that he wrote, promote trickle-down economics? That is not a myth. He's just said it right there in this article. And then an absurd leftist caricature of what rightists are supposed to believe. Dan, you've written an entire blog with multiple references as to what trickle-down economics is, and then tried to say that it was a myth, and now that it's a caricature about what you are supposed to believe. And then a conspiracy theory as outlandish after its fashion as QAnon. It's not a conspiracy theory, Dan. What has our government just done? What has our government just done last Friday? And what does it probably want to do again? just what? Like, I'm at a loss for words. I really am. I just don't know what else to say to that. What do you say to that? What do you say? It just we've been through his whole blog explaining why he's wrong and some of the crazy crackpot stuff he's been saying about his crazy right-wing libertarian nonsense that he's been spewing. And yet, oh no, guys, it's okay. It's just a myth. Remember, guys, trickle-down economics is just a myth. It's okay that we're cutting down, the tax burden on the rich and those who can afford to pay more. Just ignore the trickle-down economics. Ignore Daniel Hanan as he's behind a curtain doing this. That's what's behind Jeff Taylor's curtain. In reality, it's just Daniel Hanan's behind there, just doing that, just going, trickle-down economics is a myth, Jeff. Tell the people it's a myth as he trickles down, as he attempts to trickle down the economy. Just, what? Oh, wow. Wow. Just what a blog. What a blog. Truss and Co and the Libertarians, they hide as conservatives, like Sargo of Swindon claiming he's left wing. Yeah, exactly. It's just been a massive con, unfortunately. And unfortunately, many people are going to buy it. That's the case. And I just don't know what to say. We'll see what the market says. And hey, you libertarians meant to love the market, right, Dan? The market hasn't reacted too well. So now you've panicked and you've tried to make this article to say, hey, guys, don't worry about it. Everything's going fine. Don't worry. Us crashing the economy is all part of the plan. I seriously wonder if there is an economic crash, whether we will get some conservative commentator who will come out and generally say that crashing the economy was generally part of the plan to somehow make the UK economy better. It's possible. It's probable, but I wonder if they'll have the balls to actually go out and say that. But oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. What a show we've had today. I know we promised going on to the Duran and covering Coach Red Pill and his crazy Ukraine takes, but not today. Not today. I can't. Not after this. I've already fried my brain. I've already fried my brain on Daniel Hanan. This is what your brain looks like on Daniel Hanan. Literally. So, as always, thank you so much for everyone for joining. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And of course, there is the YouTube subscription where you can join the Pony Club, and there's the YouTube thank you button as well. Thank you very much to the people who have sent in super chats today. I think it was number 3, I think, but with both super chats today, I think. So thank you very much to you for sending in those super chats. Like I say, thank you very much to everyone who does support the channel. It's very, very much appreciated. And we're going into bad economic times, so please only do give if you really can afford to give. So I want to stress that, guys. So thank you very much for everyone for joining today. Like I say, please do remember to hit that like, share button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to, we've mentioned that already. Drop a comment below, as Pretty Bird has just said. Yeah, drop a comment below. It helps with the algorithm. But thank you very much, as always, for coming along, supporting. There won't be a good morning walk this week, although I may do it on a different day, maybe on a Sunday. Like I say, I'll let you know, or maybe I'll just randomly do one out of nowhere like I normally do. So watch out for that. Like I say, remember to hit the little bell icon so you get that notification. Oh, Cathology, thank you very much. Well earned. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Cathology. And as always, have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your week. And of course, watch out for Daniel Hanan hidden behind curtains doing his trickle-down economic dance and then trying to explain to people that it is nothing but a myth. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.